A few years ago, I met a retired teacher who felt perfectly fine. No pain, no warning signs, just a little fatigue she blamed on age, and a change in appetite she thought was stress. 6 months later, she was diagnosed with advanced colon cancer, and when the doctors reviewed her history, they said something that still stays with me. The signs were there the whole time. They simply didn't hurt, and because they didn't hurt, they were ignored.
This is one of the most tragic patterns we see in medicine. The absence of pain creates a false sense of safety. People believe the body will alert them loudly when something is wrong, but the colon is different. It is flexible, adaptive, and remarkably quiet, which allows disease to progress silently while the person feels normal enough to continue daily life.
I'm Dr. Howard Tucker, neurologist and longevity physician, and after decades working with adults over 60, I've learned that the most dangerous diseases are rarely dramatic at the beginning. Colon cancer doesn't announce itself with sharp pain or emergencies. It blends into routine life, and that is exactly why so many seniors miss it until it becomes far more serious.
And I am Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara, a physician who has spent more than a century observing how illness develops long before diagnosis. Through war, famine, and modern medicine, I have seen the same truth repeated. The body always gives signals first, but those signals are often quiet, slow, and easy to rationalize away.
That is why today's conversation matters so deeply. Colon cancer is often described as painless in its early stages, and that single word causes harm. Seniors hear painless and assume harmless, but medically, painless often means advanced before detection, especially in organs designed to stretch and compensate.
Pain is a late signal, not an early one. The colon can tolerate obstruction, inflammation, and abnormal growth for years without triggering pain receptors. During that time, tumors may grow, blood supply may change, and nutrient absorption may quietly decline, all without creating what people expect to feel as illness.
According to data from the National Cancer Institute and long-term studies published in journals like the New England Journal of Medicine, colon cancer remains one of the leading causes of cancer-related death in adults over 60. The reason is not lack of treatment. It is late detection driven by misunderstood early symptoms.
Exactly. When seniors finally present with pain, weight loss, or bowel obstruction, the disease has often moved beyond the colon itself. Earlier signs existed, but they were dismissed as aging, diet changes, stress, or harmless digestive shifts.
In this episode, we are going to talk about those quiet signals, the changes that don't feel urgent, the symptoms people normalize because they are subtle or painless, and why waiting for pain is often the most dangerous decision someone can make.
We will explain why these signs appear years before diagnosis, what is happening biologically inside the body when they show up, and how the colon communicates distress without using pain as its primary language.
Just as importantly, we will talk about what helps, not extreme treatments, not fear-driven decisions, but awareness, timing, and simple actions that allow seniors to regain control before the disease progresses beyond prevention.
This is not about panic, it is about understanding. When people recognize these signals early, outcomes change dramatically. Early-stage colon cancer has a high survival rate, but only when it is recognized before pain appears.
If you stay with us until the end, you will understand how the body tries to protect itself long before cancer takes hold, why these signs are often misunderstood, and what to do when something feels subtly off but not obviously wrong.
Once you see these signals clearly, you will never dismiss them the same way again. The body is not silent. It is simply speaking more quietly than we were taught to listen for.
Before we name the first sign, I want to slow everyone down for a moment, because this is where most misunderstandings begin. Seniors are taught to look for pain, bleeding, or sudden emergencies, but colon cancer rarely starts there. It starts with physiology changing quietly, often years before anyone thinks to look deeper.
That is correct. The colon is not like the stomach or the skin. It does not protest early. It adapts. When abnormal cells begin to grow, the surrounding tissue stretches and compensates. Blood flow shifts. Nerves remain calm. The body prioritizes function over alarm, which allows disease to hide in plain sight.
And this is why people say things like, I feel fine, or nothing hurts, while something serious is already forming. According to longitudinal studies in gastroenterology, more than half of early-stage colon cancers are discovered incidentally, not because of symptoms, but because of screening or unrelated testing.
When symptoms do appear early, they are not dramatic. They are subtle shifts in how the body manages energy, digestion, and elimination. Seniors often attribute these changes to aging, diet, or stress, especially when they come and go, instead of worsening quickly.
Which brings us to the first silent sign. Not pain, not bleeding, but a change in bowel habits that feels mild enough to ignore. Slight constipation that becomes more frequent, or stools that are thinner, looser, or more irregular than before, without a clear reason.
This happens because as abnormal tissue grows inside the colon, it subtly alters how waste moves through. The passage narrows or stiffens in certain areas. The colon works harder to push material through, changing rhythm and shape long before it triggers pain.
Seniors often tell me, I just thought my digestion was slowing down, or I figured it was something I ate. And sometimes it is. But when these changes persist for weeks or months, especially if they are new after age 60, they deserve attention.
What makes this sign dangerous is that it feels harmless. There is no urgency, no suffering, just inconvenience. But medically, persistent changes in bowel pattern are one of the earliest signals that the colon environment is changing in ways it should not.
And this is where people lose time. They wait for discomfort. They wait for blood. They wait for pain. But by the time those appear, the window for easy intervention has often narrowed.
The body spoke early. It just spoke softly. And in the next section, we will explain why this first sign is often accompanied by another change that feels even less related to the colon, yet is one of the most overlooked warnings in senior health.
After changes in bowel habits, the next signal often feels completely unrelated, which is why it gets missed. Seniors say they are sleeping the same hours, napping the same way, eating the same foods, yet they feel more tired than they used to. Not exhausted, not sick, just quietly drained.
This type of fatigue is very specific. It is not the sleepiness of poor rest or the weakness of illness. It is a gradual loss of stamina that appears without effort and does not fully recover with sleep. The body feels heavier, slower, as if energy leaks out during the day.
Many people assume this is aging. They say, I guess I don't have the same energy anymore. But research published in oncology and internal medicine journals shows that unexplained fatigue is one of the most common early complaints in people later diagnosed with colon cancer.
The reason lies in metabolism and blood chemistry, not sleep. Even small, slow blood loss from the colon can reduce iron levels over time. This does not cause dramatic anemia at first. It creates a low-grade deficiency that starves muscles and the brain of oxygen quietly.
And because the loss is microscopic, there may be no visible blood, no black stools, no red flags that feel obvious, just a body that does not bounce back the way it used to.
In addition, growing tumors release inflammatory signals into the bloodstream. These signals alter how cells produce energy. Mitochondria become less efficient. The body shifts into a conservation mode, prioritizing survival over vitality.
Seniors often describe this as losing their spark. Tasks feel more effortful. Walking the same distance feels heavier. Focus fades faster. And yet medical visits often end with reassurance because standard tests still appear normal.
This is why the energy shift is dangerous. It hides inside normal aging narratives. It does not demand attention. It politely waits while disease progresses underneath.
According to large cohort studies, unexplained fatigue, combined with subtle digestive changes, significantly increases the likelihood of colorectal pathology, especially in adults over 60.
But when caught early, this stage is still highly reversible. Removing the source of blood loss and inflammation often restores energy quickly. That is why recognizing this signal matters.
And here is the critical part. when this fatigue appears alongside the first sign we discussed. Even if both feel mild, the body is telling a consistent story. Something inside the colon is altering systemic function.
In the next section, we will talk about a signal that many people dismiss as dietary or emotional, but which is often the body's attempt to compensate for changes happening deeper in the gut.
After fatigue, the next signal often gets blamed on stress or mood. Seniors notice they are eating differently, not because they are dieting, but because food simply feels less appealing. Portions shrink, meals feel easier to skip, and no one feels alarmed because appetite loss is subtle.
This is one of the most misunderstood early signs. Appetite does not disappear suddenly. It fades quietly. The brain receives altered hunger signals due to inflammatory compounds released by abnormal tissue in the colon. These compounds interfere with ghrelin and leptin, the hormones that regulate hunger and satiety.
People often say, "I just don't feel like eating much," or "I get full faster than I used to." And because stress and emotional shifts are common later in life, appetite changes are rarely investigated further.
But biologically, early cancer alters the gut-brain axis. The colon communicates distress upward through immune and neural pathways. The result is early satiety, subtle nausea, or a sense that meals are heavier than they once were.
And here's where things get dangerous. Appetite loss does not look dramatic. Weight may not drop at first, clothing still fits, so the change is dismissed as psychological or circumstantial.
Yet clinical data shows that appetite suppression is often the body's attempt to reduce metabolic demand during internal stress. The body senses something is wrong and unconsciously downshifts intake to conserve resources.
Seniors may also find themselves avoiding certain foods without knowing why. Meat feels harder to tolerate. Heavy meals create discomfort. This is not preference. It is physiology adapting to altered digestion.
Tumors can subtly affect motility and enzyme signaling. The digestive system becomes less efficient. The body responds by reducing hunger to avoid strain.
And because this process is slow, people adjust without noticing. Smaller meals become normal. Skipping dinner becomes acceptable. Family members may even praise the change as healthy.
But when appetite changes combine with unexplained fatigue and bowel shifts, the pattern becomes medically significant. These signs rarely travel alone.
This is why early colon cancer is so dangerous. Each signal feels manageable in isolation. Together they tell a clear story. The body is under silent stress.
In the next section, we will discuss a sign that often appears alongside appetite changes. One that many seniors experience, but almost never connect to the colon, even though it is deeply tied to what is happening inside.
After appetite changes, the next signal often feels inconvenient rather than concerning. Seniors notice sudden urges to use the bathroom that appear without warning, then disappear just as quickly. Some days everything feels normal. Other days, urgency shows up out of nowhere.
This pattern is particularly deceptive because it is inconsistent. True emergencies tend to repeat reliably. Early colon pathology does not. It fluctuates, responding to inflammation, stool movement, and pressure changes inside the colon.
People often blame coffee, stress, or nerves. They say, "Some days my bowels are just sensitive." And because urgency does not always lead to accidents or pain, it feels manageable.
But medically, urgency without infection or clear dietary cause suggests altered signaling between the colon and the nervous system. Abnormal tissue can irritate the bowel wall, triggering false alarms that feel like a sudden need to go.
What makes this dangerous is that urgency often comes and goes. When it disappears, people assume the issue resolved itself. But in reality, the colon is adapting around a growing problem.
Tumors and precancerous lesions can disrupt how the colon senses fullness. The rectum becomes hypersensitive, interpreting small amounts of stool as urgent signals.
Seniors may also experience incomplete evacuation. They go to the bathroom, but still feel like something was left behind. Again, no pain, no blood, just discomfort that fades.
That sensation is often caused by partial obstruction or uneven narrowing inside the colon. Waste passes, but not smoothly. The nerves detect resistance and respond with urgency.
And because this does not happen every day, it gets rationalized. People adjust routines. They sit closer to bathrooms. They limit outings, all without understanding why.
This is one of the earliest ways colon disease quietly reduces quality of life before diagnosis. Independence shrinks subtly, long before illness is acknowledged.
According to gastrointestinal studies, intermittent urgency combined with bowel habit changes significantly increases the likelihood of colorectal abnormalities, especially in adults over 60.
Yet because urgency is uncomfortable rather than painful, it is rarely discussed openly. Seniors feel embarrassed. Doctors are not told the full story.
And that silence allows disease to continue unchecked. The body is signaling distress, but the message never reaches medical attention.
In the next section, we will talk about a sign that is often written off as aging or iron deficiency alone, yet it plays a critical role in how colon cancer hides in plain sight.
One of the most dangerous aspects of colon cancer is that it can bleed without ever announcing itself. Seniors expect blood to be obvious, red in the toilet, dark stools, something unmistakable. But early colon cancer rarely behaves that way.
Correct. The bleeding is often microscopic. Small amounts of blood are lost slowly, day after day, invisible to the eye. The stool may look completely normal, yet iron is being drained from the body quietly.
This is why many seniors are told they are anemic without being told why. Blood tests show low iron. Fatigue is blamed on aging. Supplements are prescribed, but the source of the loss is never fully investigated.
From a biological standpoint, tumors develop fragile blood vessels. These vessels leak intermittently, especially as stool passes over them. The loss is small enough to avoid detection, but constant enough to alter blood chemistry.
And because the loss is slow, the body adapts. Heart rate increases slightly. Oxygen delivery becomes less efficient. Muscles tire faster. The brain works harder to stay focused.
This explains why some seniors feel winded doing tasks they once managed easily, or why they feel lightheaded standing up. These are not circulation problems alone. They are oxygen delivery issues tied to hidden blood loss.
According to studies in gastroenterology, iron deficiency anemia in adults over 60 should always raise suspicion for gastrointestinal bleeding until proven otherwise. Yet too often, that step is skipped.
Especially when there is no visible blood. Both patients and clinicians are reassured falsely by what they cannot see. But the colon does not need to bleed dramatically to cause harm.
Over time, this silent blood loss weakens the immune system, slows tissue repair, and accelerates fatigue. The body enters a compensatory state that masks the seriousness of the underlying problem.
And when iron supplements are given without identifying the cause, the warning sign is temporarily silenced. The blood count improves, but the disease continues growing.
This is why we say colon cancer does not just hide. It blends in. It uses the body's adaptability against itself.
In the next section, we will discuss a sign that many seniors assume is emotional or psychological, but which often reflects the body's response to chronic internal stress from disease.
After hidden blood loss, the next signal often seems almost positive. Seniors notice their weight drifting down slightly without trying. A few pounds disappear, clothes feel looser, and instead of concern, there is often relief.
This is one of the most deceptive signs. Early cancer-related weight loss is not dramatic. It does not look like illness. It looks like success. The scale changes slowly, often over months, making it easy to dismiss.
People say, I guess I'm eating less, or maybe my metabolism changed. And because appetite shifts and fatigue already feel normal, the weight change feels logical.
But biologically, early cancer alters how the body uses energy. Tumors consume glucose aggressively. Inflammatory signals increase resting metabolic demand. Muscle tissue begins to break down quietly to meet energy needs.
And because this process is gradual, the body does not appear sick. There is no sudden wasting, just a slow redistribution of weight that goes unnoticed.
Seniors may lose muscle while preserving fat, which is why strength declines before appearance changes. Grip feels weaker, stairs feel heavier, balance feels less stable.
And because weight loss is small, often 5 to 10 pounds over a year, it does not trigger alarm. Friends may even comment positively.
But unintentional weight loss in adults over 60 is one of the strongest predictors of underlying disease, including colorectal cancer, especially when paired with fatigue and digestive changes.
According to internal medicine studies, any unexplained weight loss greater than 5% of body weight within 6 to 12 months warrants medical evaluation, even in the absence of pain.
The danger is not the weight itself. It is what the weight change represents, a body diverting resources to manage internal stress.
This is why weight loss often appears late in the sequence of silent signs. By the time it shows up, multiple systems are already involved.
And yet, this stage is still early enough to intervene effectively, if the pattern is recognized.
In the next section, we will talk about a final sign that many seniors dismiss as emotional or mental, but which often reflects the body's response to prolonged internal strain. The final sign often surprises people because it feels personal rather than physical. Seniors notice subtle changes in mood and focus. Patience thins, motivation fades, concentration takes more effort, and the immediate assumption is simple: this must be aging.
This is one of the most misunderstood signals in medicine. The brain is highly sensitive to systemic stress. When the body is dealing with chronic inflammation, blood loss, or metabolic strain, the brain is affected long before structural disease is detected.
People describe it as feeling less sharp, less engaged. Tasks that once felt easy now feel draining. Reading takes more effort. Conversations feel harder to follow. And because these changes happen slowly, they are rarely mentioned to doctors.
Biologically, this shift is not psychological weakness. It is neurochemical response. Inflammatory cytokines released by growing tumors cross the blood-brain barrier and interfere with neurotransmitters responsible for motivation, focus, and emotional regulation.
This is why some seniors feel low without feeling depressed, or anxious without clear cause. The emotional tone changes, but there is no obvious trigger.
Additionally, chronic iron deficiency and reduced oxygen delivery impair frontal lobe function. Decision-making slows. Mental stamina drops. The brain begins conserving energy just like the rest of the body.
Families often notice this before the individual does. They say someone seems quieter, less interested, more withdrawn, and it gets explained away as retirement adjustment or personality change.
But clinically, when mood and focus changes appear alongside fatigue, appetite shifts, and digestive changes, the pattern becomes concerning. The brain is responding to systemic illness, not simply time passing.
Studies in psycho-oncology consistently show that subtle cognitive and emotional changes often precede cancer diagnosis by months or even years, particularly in colorectal disease.
The danger is that these signs are invisible on scans. They do not show up on routine labs, they live in lived experience, and when ignored, they allow disease to continue unchecked.
But here's the important part. When the underlying stressor is addressed early, these mental and emotional changes are often reversible. Clarity returns, motivation lifts, the mind comes back online.
This is why listening matters. The body does not separate physical illness from mental function. It speaks through both at the same time.
And now, when we look at all 7 signs together, not in isolation but as a sequence, the picture becomes clear. The body was never silent. It was consistent.
In the next section, we will talk about what actually helps. Not fear-based action, not drastic measures, but the steps that restore awareness, timing, and control before it is too late.
When people hear these signs one by one, they often think, that sounds familiar. But when they hear all 7 together, something shifts. They realize this wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was a sequence.
And that is the most important understanding. The body does not fail suddenly. It negotiates, it compensates, it whispers long before it breaks. Colon cancer does not arrive unannounced. It arrives politely.
What surprises most seniors is not that these signs exist, it's that no one ever told them these signs were connected. They were taught to wait for pain, to wait for bleeding, to wait for certainty.
But medicine teaches us something different. By the time certainty arrives, choice has already narrowed. Earlier, quieter moments are where control still exists.
And here's the part we have not yet talked about. The moment that quietly decides outcomes for most people does not happen in a hospital. It happens at home, in a bathroom, at the dinner table, during an ordinary week when nothing feels urgent.
It is the moment someone decides whether a small change deserves attention or deserves another excuse.
In our next conversation, we will explain exactly how that moment should be handled, what questions actually matter, what tests truly change outcomes, and what seniors can do without fear, panic, or rushing into extremes.
Because the goal is not to live in worry. The goal is to live informed, calm, aware.
If this felt uncomfortably familiar, that is not coincidence. It means your body, or someone you love, may be asking for a closer look.
And the difference between listening now and waiting later is often the difference between a problem that can be managed quietly and one that cannot.
We'll pick up right there.